Tonight, we're at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, where Turkey is making a bold shift in its energy strategy. As Europe faces a gas crisis and NATO tensions rise, Turkey's decisions could redraw energy maps and shift global alliances. At the 2025 UN General Assembly, Turkey's energy policy took center stage. President Erdogan met with US President Trump, who demanded NATO allies cut energy ties with Russia. Simultaneously, Turkey announced major new deals for American and Australian natural gas. This isn't just about energy. It's about Turkey's role in the war in Ukraine, NATO's unity, and the balance of power in the Middle East. Turkey is caught between its complex relationship with Russia and mounting pressure from the West. The stakes are high. Turkey's choices could define its economic future and reshape the region. In this analysis, we'll break down Turkey's energy history, the new LNG deals, and what this means for NATO and the world. Stay with us as we unpack this pivotal story. To understand Turkey's pivot, we need to look at its past. Turkey imports nearly all its natural gas, about 99%, making energy security a national priority. For decades, Russia has been Turkey's main supplier, with pipelines like Blue Stream and Turk Stream providing affordable gas. In 2023, Russia supplied 40% of Turkey's gas, creating deep interdependence. This reliance gave Moscow political leverage, with the threat of gas cutoffs always looming. Turkey has tried to diversify, importing from Azerbaijan, Iran, and investing in LNG. But Russian gas remained central. The war in Ukraine exposed the risks. Turkey didn't join Western sanctions, but its position became increasingly precarious. As Europe moved away from Russian energy, Turkey found itself isolated, profiting from cheap Russian oil but under pressure as a NATO member. The contradiction became unsustainable. Washington's pressure mounted, making a real shift in energy policy urgent. Turkey's dramatic pivot is a response to these mounting pressures. The next chapter, a move toward LNG and new alliances. Let's see how this unfolds. The turning point came at the 2025 UN General Assembly. Turkey announced two major long-term LNG deals: a 20-year contract with Mercuria for US LNG and a 9-year deal with Australia's Woodside Energy. These agreements mark a strategic shift away from Russian and Iranian piped gas. The timing, just as Erdogan met with Trump, signals a calculated move to strengthen ties with Washington. LNG offers Turkey flexibility. It's shipped, not piped, allowing Ankara to diversify suppliers and reduce dependence on any single country. These deals are not a quick fix. They're a long-term bet on energy security and geopolitical maneuverability. For Turkey, it's about more than appeasing the US. It's about gaining independence and leverage. The cost is high, but so are the stakes. Turkey is buying not just gas, but options for its future. The pivot is underway. Despite the LNG pivot, Turkey's energy ties with Russia remain strong, especially in oil. As of late 2025, Turkey is the world's third-largest buyer of Russian oil, taking advantage of discounts amid Western sanctions. Turkish refineries now rely on Russian crude for up to 90% of their supply, and Turkey profits by refining and exporting fuel to Europe. This arrangement is controversial, fueling tensions within NATO. President Trump has demanded NATO allies stop buying Russian oil, putting Erdogan in a bind. Turkey's economy depends on cheap Russian oil, even as it tries to appease Washington with LNG deals. Russia's influence goes further. Rosatom is building Turkey's first nuclear plant, deepening long-term ties. Even as Turkey courts the West, Russian energy remains a pillar of its economy. The balancing act is delicate and risky. The question: how long can Turkey walk this tightrope? Let's look at the numbers behind Turkey's pivot. Turkey uses 50-60 billion cubic meters of gas annually. Russia supplied 40% of that. The new LNG deals will eventually cover nearly half of what Turkey once bought from Russia. Washington is backing this shift with economic pressure. threatening sanctions for continued Russian oil purchases. Turkey, meanwhile, imports hundreds of thousands of barrels of discounted Russian oil daily, a lifeline for its struggling economy. The incentives to keep buying are strong, but so is the pressure to diversify. US officials frame the LNG deals as a win for both sides. Turkish leaders call it a step toward energy security. For the US, it's geopolitics and trade. For Turkey, it's survival and autonomy. The numbers reveal a country caught between necessity and strategy. The stakes: economic stability, political alliances, and national security. The world is watching. Turkey's balancing act is straining NATO unity. While most NATO members take a hard line on Russia, Turkey positions itself as both mediator and economic partner to Moscow. This frustrates allies like the US and Poland, especially after recent Russian provocations in Eastern Europe. Trump's call for a Russian oil boycott targets not just Turkey, but also Hungary and Slovakia, deepening divisions within NATO. Turkey's LNG deals are a concession to US pressure, but continued Russian oil imports signal it won't abandon its own interests. Erdogan walks a fine line, cooperating with Washington while protecting vital revenue from Russian oil. This dual policy risks alienating both sides. Russia may retaliate, and NATO may see Turkey as undermining collective security. For now, Turkey leverages its unique position, but the pressure is mounting. The question: how long can this balancing act last? The answer may shape the future of the alliance. Turkey's energy pivot is reshaping regional politics and economics. By investing in LNG, Turkey could become a key energy hub for southeastern Europe, offering alternatives to Russian gas. This weakens Moscow's influence in the Balkans and strengthens Europe's energy security. At home, cheap Russian oil has cushioned Turks from global price hikes, but a sudden shift could spark inflation and unrest. LNG is pricier than piped gas, adding to economic pressures. The move also impacts disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean, lessening Turkey's need to aggressively pursue contested gas fields. A more energy-secure Turkey could either lower regional tensions or embolden Ankara elsewhere. For Russia, losing Turkey as a gas customer is a strategic setback, signaling the erosion of its energy dominance. Other nations may follow Turkey's lead, further isolating Moscow. The ripple effects are just beginning. Analysts agree. Turkey's LNG deals are a big step, but a full break with Russian energy is unlikely, at least for now. The economic benefits of cheap Russian oil are too great to abandon overnight. Any transition will be gradual and shaped by Western pressure. Turkey is also diversifying its energy technology, negotiating with both Russia and the US for nuclear projects. Other NATO members face similar dilemmas. Some, like the Czech Republic, have cut Russian oil. Others, like Hungary, are still dependent. Trump's threats of sanctions could force Turkey's hand, but the economic cost would be high. Most experts expect Turkey to keep balancing NATO commitments with pragmatic interests. The US response will be key. Will LNG deals be enough? Or will Washington demand more? The next few years will test Turkey's ability to navigate between global powers. The outcome will shape not just Turkey's future, but the region's stability. The world is watching closely. Turkey stands at the heart of a global energy realignment. Its multi-billion-dollar LNG deals mark a clear pivot to the West, under US pressure to reduce dependence on Russian gas. But Turkey's strategy is full of contradictions. It buys LNG from the US while remaining a top customer for Russian oil. This dual approach lets Ankara appease Washington, support its economy, and keep ties with Moscow. But it's risky. The stakes are huge: NATO unity, Turkey's economic stability, and the regional balance of power. The choices made in Ankara, Washington, and Moscow will echo for years. Will Turkey be forced to choose a side, or can it keep walking the tightrope? This high-stakes game is still unfolding, with the world watching every move. In the 21st century, power flows not just through armies but through pipelines and LNG tankers. Thanks for joining us as we track this evolving story.